You're not going to find Packer fans apologizing for winning a game where the refs blew it for the opponent. There's no reason to apologize for this. There's nothing to feel bad about. There's no reason on this earth why the refs calling phantom calls on the Lions, resulting in a Packer win, there's no way that that diminishes the Packer victory on Monday Night Football. Here's the bottom line. NFL officiating is horrible. Every single team in this league has to deal with complete BS calls. It's part of the price of doing business in the NFL. It happened to the Lions. It's happened to the Packers. It happens to everyone. You win or you lose from it, and you move on. It's that simple. It's the Aaron Michaels Show, aaronmichaelsshow@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of the program. You can also follow along on Twitter at Wisconsin Aaron. Okay, so the calls in the second half against the Lions were complete BS. The officiating in the NFL is completely awful. No one is denying that. What the farce is, though, is to act like this is an isolated incident against the Lions. Like this just happened in a vacuum. Like there's no precedent for it. And that simply is not true, folks. This type of thing happens every week to just about every team. And there have been multiple games, multiple times, where teams have had to win despite the officials. There's nothing new here. It doesn't mean that it's right. The Lions have every right to be upset and pissed off about this, as does the other 30 teams in the NFL. At some point, because it's happened to them. And it will happen again. And the NFL has to do something about it. But for some to tout this as the reason that the Lions lost is foolishness. We've seen this for long enough in the NFL. It's gotten to the point where the officiating is something that you almost have to prepare for. You have to game plan for. You have to game plan around. You have to win around it. Or in the case of the Lions, lose because of it. Look at the calls on Clay Matthews to open up last season. Look at the call this year in week 2 against the Broncos that helped give the Bears a win. It was a late hit on the quarterback, a Matthews-type play from last season. Just a complete BS call. But we are at the point now where you can't use it as an excuse because it is so prevalent. When you saddle up and you enter into an NFL game as a player or a coach or watching as a fan, by this point you have to know this. You have to outcoach the other team. You have to outplay the other team, and you have to work around the refs. This is clearly established by this point. And don't use it as a crutch as to why you lost. The Packers were getting hosed last week against the Cowboys, and they won. It doesn't mean that you have to lose the game. It is what it is. Again, it's not an acceptable thing. Like I already said, clearly the NFL officiating sucks. It's awful. But it is what it is until further notice. And until it changes, you have to work around that. And either you win from it or you lose from it, but you move on. And the Lions could have won that game last night had they scored more touchdowns instead of field goals. I mean, they got off to a good start, a couple of big plays down the field on their first few drives, but they didn't come away with enough to show for it at the start or at any other point in the game. And, you know, Barry Sanders weighed in on it. And I thought that he put it well. And this is what he said. He said, that is sickening. The NFL needs to look at a way to prevent that from happening. 2 phantom hands to the face calls really hurt us tonight. Yes, we could have scored touchdowns, but the Lions played too well to have the game end this way. And I don't disagree with that much. I do disagree with the fact that the Lions played well. The Packers, folks, the Packers spent 3/4 of that game trying to give the game to the Lions, and they never took it and ran with it. They weren't able to pull away despite the Packers' best efforts to give them that game. And here is an inaccurate statement made by the Lions after the game, though. Safety Tracy Walker said, extremely pissed off right now. It is what it is. Disappointed. Hurt. We had that game. Said, I'm going to say the same expletive. We should have won it. It is what it is, though. Got to bounce back. He later went on to say, when asked what he was upset with, he said, honestly, just the whole game in itself, the end result. I feel like we could have had a better game, and we were supposed to come out victorious with that game, but Green Bay came to play. But that's where he's wrong. Green Bay did not come to play. The Packers looked really flat last night for 3 quarters. They looked like they were informed about 3 hours before kickoff that, oh yeah, you have a game tonight at 7:15. I thought the Packers looked completely unready and unprepared for that game. And that manifested itself in a lot of ways. Drop passes, fumbles, drop touchdowns, big plays given up early by the defense. And I maintain to you that during the game last night, when the Lions were winning and things weren't looking so good for the Packers, it had nothing to do with the Lions. It was all about the Packers giving that game away. And the Lions were playing just average because the Packers tried everything in their power to give it to Detroit. And due to the Lions playing average football for 4 quarters, it left the door open to the Packers to win it by putting together one really good quarter of play. And of course, that was the 4th quarter. But, with the Packers' turnovers, their dropped touchdowns, they had a couple of those. The Aaron Jones fumble, the Darius Shepard no fair catching the ball above his head. Despite what I just said, I don't know how the Packers won that game last night. I can't believe that they won it. I haven't seen a Packer team look that flat since Mike Sherman was in Green Bay. I remember Sherman teams would frequently come out flat. Like they just woke up and had no clue that there was a game that day. And a lot of times, it would happen against far inferior teams. And I didn't see much, if any, of that under McCarthy. McCarthy had his own problems that I don't care to delve into tonight. This is not a comparison between Sherman and LaFleur. I think that LaFleur's doing a great job so far. I'm just pointing out that I have not seen a flat Packer performance like that, like what we saw through the first 3 quarters. I haven't seen that since Mike Sherman was the head coach. But at any rate, 2 horrible penalties. At least if nothing else, those horrible calls against the Lions, they highlight the problems of the NFL. I mean, you tune in to just about any game and you watch it, and any given sequence of plays goes like this. Flag, 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 normal play, flag, 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 flag. It is completely out of control. Not unexpected at this point, but still out of control. I have to laugh because every once in a while I'll watch tennis on TV, and they have reviews in tennis, if you didn't know that. It's done with computers to determine if the balls are inbounds or out. You have a quick review. They look at it on the computer, and the results come up almost instantly, and it's right. It's 100% accurate, and that's tennis. So you mean to tell me that the NFL and all their popularity and all their money, they can't do better than they are? Well, do we really want the NFL to try to fix this? I mean, I don't want the NFL trying to fix anything. You know why? Because they literally take everything that they're trying to fix and they break it beyond recognition. For example, see definition of a catch. What is pass interference? What is roughing the passer? What is any damn thing that they touch? It's all unrecognizable at this point. I heard Jim Nantz on CBS during his game on Sunday talking about how the NFL has to do something about the onside kick because teams just never recover it anymore. Please don't encourage that, Jim. do not request that the NFL do any sort of fixing on anything. I mean, if the United States has a foreign enemy, somebody that they may need to beat in a war, I would suggest, instead of sending military in, send the NFL. Put them in charge of fixing the enemy's place of residence, and it'll be in shambles before you know it. At any rate, folks, these stupid, bad, inexcusable penalties, they have a way of evening out. And eventually they will. So Packer fans, enjoy the win. There's nothing that needs to be diminished or taken away. There's nothing to apologize about. You know why? Because you know damn well that next week the Packers are going to be hosed on a couple of stupid calls. And you know what, Lions fans? Next week the opponent that you're going to be going against is going to get called for a bunch of BS penalties too. Because this is prevalent. You can be upset, or you could be happy, depending on what side you're on. I get it, and I understand it. But don't act like you're the only victim. Or like this is the first time a travesty like this has ever been experienced. Anyway, turning the page a little bit. Folks, the Green Bay Packers need a wide receiver. I don't care if Davante Adams is healthy or not. Even when he's healthy, they need another receiver because they are pretty void of any sort of talent at that position. I will say this, and I can get back to this in a minute, but please give me more Allen Lazard and less Darius Shepard. But look what happened last night without Adams. I know Geronimo Allison got hurt, but how many passes did he drop? LaFleur said he counted a total of 6 in the game for the Packers as a whole. But Allison, he's been dropping passes all year, and he's not emerged as a threat behind Adams. MVS, he was out there again last night too. He had the one nice catch down the sideline, but he was a complete no-show. And you have the chosen one, Jake Kumerow, 2 catches for 17 yards. Lazard came in and came out of nowhere, and he played great. You know, and right now, Allen Lazard is the second best receiver on this team. Now, that could change, but right now, he is. And that's a problem. The Packers need to add to the wide receiver position because this group that they have, even when Adams is healthy, is not enough. You need to grab someone else who's going to be halfway decent even when Adams is back out there. And the timeline and everything going on with Adams is pretty fuzzy, but the Packers have to do something. And you know what's nice? You know, if this were Ted Thompson, you know that nothing would get done. Absolutely nothing. He wouldn't part ways in a trade with any of his precious draft picks. He wouldn't part ways with any of the precious players that he drafted. And he would be 100% willing to waste another year of Aaron Rodgers' Hall of Fame career in the spirit of standing pat with what we got. Not to be overreactionary. It's 6 games and we don't have a second receiver besides Adams, but we're not going to do anything reactionary like get better. At least with Goody, you have faith that something's going to be done. And he's showing that he's more than willing to pull the trigger on moves that he thinks need to be made. And nobody in their right mind can look at the Packers receiving corps right now and say, yeah, we're good with this. No worries here. Folks, I'm telling you, the Packers have something to play for here. This is not just going through the motions. The Packers have the chance to be the best team in the NFC. Look at it right now. Your top 3 teams in the NFC are the Packers, the Saints, and the 49ers, in no particular order. It's too early to start ordering. But right now, those are your elite teams in the NFC. This is not a time to be screwing around. The Packers should be trying to compete for a Super Bowl, just as they should have been trying to do every year since Aaron Rodgers took over, and into the back end of Favre's career as well. They can't stand pat with the current receivers that they have on that roster. Speaking of moves that the Packers made to get better and to be a contender, where would the Packers be without the Smiths on defense? Those two guys came up huge again yesterday. They've been amazing. Just, again, a testament to signing free agents. It's not going to work out every time, and it may not fix every problem that you have, but it is a hell of a start when you at least make an attempt to go get them, is it not? And for all these years that Ted wouldn't go out and he wouldn't sign free agents, you had the media with him and a portion of the fans saying, well, Ted is doing such a great job. He's not reactionary. He's not going to go spend. And of course, they always took it to the extreme. Oh, everyone wants the Packers to go sign an Albert Haynesworth contract. And then look at where that gets the Redskins. Nothing. And nobody said that the Packers had to do that. A lot of people just wanted Ted to bring in people like Za'Darius and Preston Smith. Okay, you had to pay a little bit for him, but you weren't breaking the bank. Someone solid to fill holes on your roster, and Ted just wouldn't do it. It's amazing what happens, is it not, ladies and gentlemen, when you do go out and you do sign the free agents. Actually, all the moves that Goody has made have turned out to be great to this point. Headline from Packers Wire and USA Today. Packers, here it is. Packers lacking production at wide receiver without Davante Adams. Well, golly gee, you don't say. Lacking production at receiver without Adams. I would say so. They need help on that offense when it comes to the passing game, and they need that help now. Packers are home next week at noon against the Raiders, and you can't let up against them. The Raiders may not be the most formidable opponent that the Packers will face all year, but they're not as bad as what people may think. They're coming off a bye and a win against the Bears as well. So that will be, every week is a good test in the NFL, of course, unless you're playing against the Miami Dolphins. Hell, even the Jets. Look what happened with when Sam Darnold came back this last week. There aren't pushovers in the NFL, and the NFL is a very difficult thing to figure out. And I said that on Twitter during the early games on Sunday. Look at the NFL is such a week-to-week thing. It's so hard to predict. It's so hard to figure out. And I know a lot of it has to do with matchups and things of that nature. But, so you have the Packers beat the Vikings, and then you have the Eagles beat the Packers, and then the Eagles and the Vikings are playing on Sunday, and the Vikings just start slapping the Eagles around. So it is a impossible league. It's an impossible thing to try to figure out on a week-to-week basis, and you can't take any teams lightly, including the Raiders, who are coming up next week. That's going to do it for tonight. As always, fan mail can be sent to aaronmichaelshow@gmail.com. Make sure that you also follow along on Twitter as well. I am at Wisconsin Aaron. Keep the people coming on there. Always love hearing people's insight and going back and forth with people on there. Those who agree and those who disagree as well. It is always a good time. And always remember, the Aaron Michaels Show, we are alternative Wisconsin sports media. We're not biased. We don't pretend that Mike McCarthy was the second best coach in the NFL behind Bill Belichick and then make excuses when he doesn't get hired in the offseason. We don't pretend that Ted Thompson is a superior GM when he doesn't even use all the tools in his toolbox to sign free agents. We aren't biased against the home team. We say exactly what we're thinking, not biased. We are not afraid, and the one thing we will certainly not do is talk down to frustrated Wisconsin sports fans. Have a great night, everybody.